Welcome back to Everyday English. Tonight I brought an amazing story for you. This story is for the people who smile around others while secretly carrying pressure nobody fully understands. The people who feel like they cannot afford to fail because too many people are depending on them. And maybe this story will feel familiar to you. It was 2:13 in the morning. The university library was almost empty. Only a few students remained, sitting quietly under the cold white lights, pretending they still had enough energy to continue studying. Lucas rubbed his eyes slowly and stared at the laptop screen in front of him. Numbers, graphs, assignments, deadlines. For the past 4 hours, he had been trying to finish an economics report due the next morning, but his mind was somewhere else completely. His phone vibrated softly beside him. A message from his mother. "Did you eat something today?" Lucas looked at the message for a few seconds before replying, "Yes, don't worry." But the truth was, he had not eaten anything since morning. Not because he forgot, because he was trying to save money. He leaned back in his chair and looked around the empty library. Sometimes he still could not believe this was his life now. A few years ago, he was just a teenager sitting on the roof of his family's apartment, staring at airplanes crossing the sky and wondering what life looked like outside his country. Now he was living abroad, studying, working, trying to survive, trying not to disappoint everyone who believed in him. And honestly, that last part was the hardest, because nobody really talks about the emotional pressure of becoming the hope of your family. People talk about ambition, success, discipline, hard work. But they rarely talk about the fear hidden behind all of it. The fear of failing people you love. Lucas closed his laptop slowly and checked the time again. 2:17 Uhr nachts. He still had classes at 9 in the morning. But sleep had become strange lately. Even when he slept, his mind never truly rested. There was always another thought waiting for him. Tuition, rent, deadlines, his younger sister's future, his father's health, his mother pretending everything back home was okay. And sometimes the pressure became so heavy that he could physically feel it inside his chest. But he never talked about it, because everyone around him thought he was strong. And maybe that was the problem. People often assume strong people do not need help. Lucas packed his books quietly and walked outside the university building. The night air was cold. The streets were nearly empty except for a few taxis moving slowly through the city. He started walking home because taking the bus this late would mean waiting another 30 minutes. As he walked through the silent streets, he remembered something his uncle told him before he left home. "You are the smart one in the family. One day you will change all our lives." At that moment, everyone smiled proudly. But Lucas remembered feeling something completely different. Fear. Because from that day forward, success stopped feeling personal. It became responsibility. And responsibility changes people. Especially young people. At first, the pressure motivated him. He studied harder than everyone else. Never missed assignments. Worked part-time on weekends. Watched online lectures late at night while drinking cheap coffee inside his tiny apartment. And honestly, it worked. His grades became excellent. Professors respected him. People called him disciplined, focused, inspiring. But nobody saw what was happening inside his mind. Nobody saw the anxiety attacks before exams. Nobody saw him staring at the ceiling at 4 in the morning, unable to sleep. Nobody saw how terrified he was of failure. Because failure no longer felt like just failure. Failure felt like destroying hope. And when someone becomes the hope of the family, they slowly stop feeling like a normal person. They begin feeling like a mission, a responsibility, a solution to everyone's problems. Lucas reached his apartment building and climbed the stairs slowly. The elevator had stopped working weeks ago, but he was already used to things not working properly. His apartment was small. One room, one desk, one bed, one window facing another building. But every time his mother asked about it, he told her he loved it. Because he never wanted her to worry. That was another thing pressure teaches people. How to hide pain professionally. Lucas placed his backpack near the desk and sat quietly on the edge of the bed. The silence inside the room felt heavy. Sometimes loneliness became louder at night, especially when he saw other students traveling during holidays while he spent weekends working extra shifts at a grocery store. But he never complained, because deep inside, he believed complaining was a luxury for people with easier lives. He opened his laptop again. 3:01 nachts. An unfinished report stared back at him, but suddenly his eyes filled with tears. Not dramatic tears, not movie tears, just silent exhaustion. The kind of exhaustion that builds slowly over years. Years of pressure, years of responsibility, years of trying to become enough. And honestly, this is something many people understand deeply, especially students, especially immigrants, especially young people trying to change their family's future. Because there is a special kind of loneliness in carrying expectations nobody fully sees. People congratulate you for being ambitious, but they do not realize ambition can become emotionally painful when it is mixed with fear. Lucas stood up and walked toward the window. The city lights reflected softly against the glass. Sometimes he wondered what life would feel like without pressure. What it would feel like to study just for learning, not survival. What it would feel like to rest without guilt, to sleep peacefully, to exist without constantly worrying about the future. But survival mode changes people. When someone spends too many years worrying about tomorrow, relaxing starts feeling dangerous. Even rest feels unproductive. And many ambitious young people live exactly like this. Always thinking, always planning, always afraid of falling behind. The next morning, Lucas arrived late to class for the first time that semester. His professor looked surprised. "You okay?" Lucas smiled automatically. "Yeah, just tired. Just tired." It was amazing how many emotions human beings hide behind those two words. During the lecture, he tried focusing on the presentation slides, but his mind kept drifting. His mother had called him the night before. She sounded happy, too happy, and Lucas knew what that meant. She was hiding something. Parents often do that when they do not want their children to worry. After class, he finally called her back. "How are things at home?" "Everything is fine," she replied quickly. Too quickly. Lucas stayed silent for a moment, then quietly asked, "Did something happen?" There was a pause. Then she admitted his father had been sick for several days but refused to go to the doctor because they wanted to save money. Lucas closed his eyes slowly. At that moment, something inside him broke a little. Not because life was shocking anymore, but because he felt helpless. Thousands of kilometers away, trying to build a future, while the people he loved continued struggling without him. That night, Lucas worked an extra shift at the grocery store. He carried heavy boxes for 6 hours straight while trying not to think too much. But emotional pressure follows people everywhere, even during work, even during conversations, even during laughter. Sometimes people look completely normal outside while internally carrying enormous emotional weight. And honestly, modern society has made this even worse. Because today everyone feels pressured to succeed quickly. Social media constantly shows people luxury, success, perfect lifestyles, perfect careers, perfect lives. Meanwhile, millions of young people are quietly exhausted, trying to survive academically, financially, emotionally, psychologically. But nobody posts burnout online. Nobody posts loneliness honestly. Nobody posts fear. So people begin believing they are the only ones struggling. A few weeks later, Lucas received his midterm results. Highest grade in the class. His classmates congratulated him. His professor praised him publicly. But strangely, he felt nothing. No excitement. No happiness. Just temporary relief. And that frightened him. Because he realized something important. Pressure had stolen his ability to enjoy achievement. Everything had become survival. One goal after another. One responsibility after another. Without peace. Without balance. without emotional rest. That night he sat alone in a small cafe near campus. Outside, snow was falling softly across the streets. Inside, people talked quietly while soft music played in the background. Lucas stared at his coffee for a long time before realizing something painful. He could not remember the last time he genuinely relaxed. Not fake relaxation. Not scrolling on his phone while feeling anxious. Real peace. And honestly, many people listening to this story probably understand that feeling. The feeling of constantly carrying pressure internally. The feeling of never fully resting because your mind refuses to become quiet. The feeling of believing your entire future depends on every decision you make. A few days later, Lucas visited one of his professors during office hours. At first they discussed academics normally, but suddenly the professor asked, "You seem exhausted lately. Are you sleeping properly?" For some reason, that simple question almost broke him emotionally, because nobody had asked him that in months. Not about grades, not about performance, about him. For the first time in a very long time, Lucas admitted the truth. "I feel tired all the time." The professor nodded slowly, then said something Lucas would remember for years. Ambitious people often think they must carry everything alone, but human beings are not machines. That sentence stayed in his mind for days. Human beings are not machines. It sounded simple, but somehow he had forgotten it completely. He had spent so much time trying to become strong that he forgot he was human first. And honestly, many people today are experiencing the same thing. People are emotionally exhausted, not because they are weak, but because modern life constantly pressures people to perform. Better grades, more money, more productivity, more achievements. Meanwhile, emotional health quietly disappears. Lucas slowly began changing small things. He started taking short walks without his phone. Started sleeping earlier at least twice a week. Started eating properly again. Started allowing himself moments of rest without guilt. At first, it felt uncomfortable, because survival mode makes peace feel unfamiliar. But slowly, something changed. His mind became calmer. Not perfect, but calmer. And for the first time in years, he realized something important. His life could not be built only on pressure, because pressure may create movement for a while. But peace is what allows human beings to survive long-term. Months later, Lucas sat in the same library again. But this time something felt different. The pressure still existed. Responsibilities still existed. Life was still difficult. But he no longer viewed himself as a machine whose only purpose was achievement. He finally understood that carrying responsibility should not require destroying yourself emotionally. And perhaps this is something many ambitious people need to hear. You are allowed to rest. You are allowed to struggle sometimes. You are allowed to grow slowly. Your worth is not dependent only on productivity, because human beings deserve peace too, not only survival. Lucas looked around the quiet library and smiled slightly. For the first time in a long time, his future no longer felt like a race. It felt like a journey, a difficult journey, but still a human one. And maybe that is what real strength actually is. Not pretending to never feel pressure, but learning how to continue living without losing yourself completely in the process. And maybe, if you needed to hear this tonight, you should remember something too. You are not weak for feeling tired. You are not failing because life feels heavy sometimes. And you do not need to carry the entire world alone. One step at a time is enough. Sometimes surviving quietly is already a form of strength.